Come home to the city. Those dark nights calling for you. Where the rooftop kings.
Welcome to the Chirosation, where chiropractors share their stories and lessons learnt in practice. The intention of the Chirosation is to provide resources and a community that will help chiropractors realize their innate potential. So join the Chirosation today. In this episode, I catch up with Dr Ali Schwarz, who shares her experience of starting practice in the UK. Ali is Australian born and found chiropractic through the phenomenal results it gave her as an athlete. She then decided to become a chiropractor herself and moved to New Zealand to study at the New Zealand College of Chiropractic. As part of her journey as a student, she joined the WCCS, the World Congress of Chiropractic Students, where she was inspired to move to the UK and practice. We go in deep about what the UK board exams require, so get your pens and paper out and enjoy. Welcome to the Chirosation, and this is where the conversation starts. What got you into chiropractic in the first place?
My chiro story. I used to be a competitive swimmer in Australia, and I was a butterflyer, and it was about the age of 12, 13, 14, was getting crippling shoulder pain to the point where I couldn't actually use my right arm. And tried physio and all that sort of stuff, and it just wasn't really working for me. And my swimming coach suggested try a chiropractor. So I'll never forget it. I got my first adjustment poolside about 2 hours before a state final. The guy, checked out my shoulder, but he just checked and adjusted my spine, and I swam pain-free for the first time in about 18 months.
Wow. And
managed to knock 4 seconds off my best time.
Wow, after one adjustment.
So just one adjustment. So just, from an athletic performance point of view, I mean, you train for months just to get 0.1, and here was 4 seconds, just boom, gone. And then Brian Kelly was my chiropractor as a teenager. So that's kind of why I went to New Zealand, because he moved over there to be president of the college. And I took a long way to get to study at the New Zealand College, but I got there eventually. Yeah.
Oh, you can't just drop that and then not tell us what the long story is. What happened? Because you're originally from Australia, right?
Yeah, from Melbourne.
Nice.
So I guess when I was swimming, school was not a priority for me. So my grades were not great, and I didn't get good enough grades to get into RMIT. And so I did an exercise science degree. Unfortunately, I got chronic fatigue syndrome. So 3 years turned into 5 years. Then I moved over to New Zealand to study in 2007. And then in 2008, just was really burnt out. So decided to take a couple of years off. I worked as a CA in an office in Melbourne, who incidentally was a New Zealand graduate as well. I think Dave Russell's here.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So she was pretty cool.
Yeah.
And then did a little bit of traveling, and then I lived in London for 3 months. Worked as a medical secretary in the neurovascular unit, which was interesting. These people would walk in just absolutely broken, and you're just like, you just need to see a chiropractor, but I wasn't allowed to say that.
Of course not.
And then went back to New Zealand in 2011 and started the whole degree again.
Wow.
Yeah.
Good on you. Some dedication. What a journey. I had no idea.
Yeah, it definitely has been a journey. And comparing my first crack at college in New Zealand, my heart just really wasn't in it My grades were shocking. I just was not committed. I'd rather go out drinking on the weekend than, study and all that sort of stuff.
That's right. That's student life, right?
Definitely. But I think with something like chiropractic, you do need and to survive chiropractic college, you do need to have your heart in it. And so it was better for me to just take some time off, regroup, grow up a bit, actually.
And gain some world experience.
Sorry?
And just gain some world experience. I mean, you travelled, you worked in different places, you had different experiences around the globe. And then to come back and go, right, no, this is definitely something I want to do. That's really cool. Yeah,
it was really good. And I know that there were some lecturers that didn't think that I would come back. So,
so you had to come prove them wrong, right?
Oh, well, of course.
Good on you.
But definitely no regrets. I think the chiropractor that I am and the person I am today is just absolute worlds apart from, if I'd really struggled through that first time round.
Certainly. Well, it always kind of seems to be that way, right? You look back on it, and yes, it may have been hard or taken longer. Or I had a similar journey as well, where chiropractic wasn't really even on my radar, and then all of a sudden it was, and it was the only thing that I wanted to do. So I was kind of full steam ahead, and I'd do anything to get in and make it happen. But it definitely wasn't a straight pathway. Oh, you've got all the right courses and you've got the right grades. Welcome, you can come straight into the college. It was definitely.
Yep.
Work, do all the courses, do all the requirements, figure out a way, huh?
Yeah. And I think one thing that everybody gets very caught up on is once you start, you have to keep going to finish it. So I think my advice to anybody who is, really not sure is you can always come back to it. Chiropractic college is always going to be there. But it's definitely something that's a lot easier to do if you're 110% committed.
Absolutely.
So I know there were a few people that, asked me about my time off, and I said, if you want to take time off and you've been thinking about it for a while, go and do it and then come back, because you'll be a hell of a lot better off coming back the second time.
100% agree. 100% agree. Because you need that dedication. Like you look at like at our class, I think your class was kind of similar as well, in that there was this massive attrition. Like if people weren't in it, you weren't getting through. It takes so much dedication.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's what I quite liked about the New Zealand college too, was that it was small. So it was really a family, whereas in Australia, you're just a number in the university system and no one really cares about you.
Yeah.
Whereas New Zealand is a very, very different vibe.
Because everyone knows your name. And if you
that too.
Exactly. And if you're struggling, everybody knows about it.
Yeah, true.
But it
if
seems,
you think you're struggling, everybody knows about it.
Yeah. But it seems to be that the attitude is they'll help and support you as long as you ask for it.
Absolutely. Yep.
This is awesome. So then when you spent your time over in London on that kind of break time, is that when you decided that you want to go over and work there?
Yes and no. London was great, but I didn't really like spending, at least half my income on a bed.
Fair enough. Welcome to Auckland. This is...
Yeah, true. True. So I did think, it'd be cool to come back and do this again, or even just to travel. But when I went into first year, the second time round, all I wanted to do was go back to Melbourne, go down to a place called Ocean Grove. It's just before the Great Ocean Road, wonderful little beachside town, and set up a practice there.
Cool.
And this is going to be a little bit of a plug, but it wasn't until I went to my first WCCS conference that I was like, oh, I could actually go and practice overseas.
Cool.
What a good idea that is. But it wasn't really until sort of, I think, third year that I really decided, this is what I'm going to do.
Cool. So what was it in WCCS, which stands for World...
Oh goodness, I should know this.
So should I? World Chiropractors...
World Congress of Chiropractic Students.
There you go. World Congress of Chiropractic Students.
I think it was just meeting so many students from around the globe, it just really opened your eyes up to possibility, because I don't know, I tend to get a little bit blinkered, especially when I want something.
Sure.
So for me, just that little practice, that was it. And then going to a conference and just mingling with all these international people who are also, you know, either just become chiropractors or almost chiropractors or just starting or whatever. And you're like, oh, I could actually go and do this all over the world. So that's kind of sowed the seed for it.
Awesome. And then what made you transition from small town in Melbourne to Edinburgh?
Oh, good question. I contacted a few UK chiropractors. I got some really good contacts again through WCCS.
Nice.
Incidentally, if you want to practice internationally, WCCS, it's a minefield. It's a gold mine. It's amazing. So got some really good contacts. Was just chatting to them about the UK. I wasn't really attached to where I lived. I just knew that I wasn't overly keen on being in London. And this job came up in Edinburgh. The guy I worked for is an Australian, and it just kind of ticked all the boxes. I had visited here before and spent a few days and really liked the city, and it's a really hard thing to put your finger on, but just that little voice inside just said, yep, go, this is it.
That's awesome.
So I did.
You got to listen to that little voice.
Oh, definitely.
That's awesome.
Definitely.
So when did you decide to move? What was it, while you were still at college, or was it after you graduated?
I was always going to go to the UK after I graduated.
Cool.
That was never going to be a question. It was just a matter of how, when, and...
Just the details. It's not that important.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
like board exams and visas.
Exactly. You figure out a way. It's fine. That's awesome. Good on you. Good on you. So then what was that journey like? And I mean, if you could speak on that and kind of talk about what it was like pre-graduation, then post, having to lift your whole life to the other side of the world. What were the lessons that you learnt during that journey, and how would you do things different, or would you?
Whoa. So 2015 was a very interesting year. So the way that the UK has their board exams, they have it 4 times a year, and they have it every 3 months. So I was never going to be able to sit the January exam, so I had to sit the March one.
Mm-hmm.
The thing is, in 2015, they changed it from your typical chiropractic exit exam kind of thing to a case-based interview, which sounds pretty easy. Sure as hell was not, and especially being only in the second cohort, there weren't many people that you could talk to about what to expect.
Yeah. Also,
I think the GCC were trying to still sort out the whole process too. So there were 2 of my classmates who sat it at the same time, and another friend who I knew from Parker College, and we'd all ask the same questions and get different answers. So there was a lot of confusion in the lead up to that. Then there was the actual interview itself, the most expensive interview you'll ever sit. I think it's gone up to £1,600, maybe even more.
I think it's around about that, yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy. I think we worked it out, it's like £35 a minute.
Wow.
Yeah, I think. So the way the interview worked is that when I sat it, they've changed it a little bit now, is that you had to submit 10 cases that you've managed and submit full patient paperwork. There were 4 main cases. There was a case that was neuromuscular, a case that was contraindicated to chiropractic care, or that you had to refer out before you could get before you could start care with them. A case that was contraindicated to technique, and an ethical dilemma. So essentially the interview was broken up into 2 parts. It's 45 minutes of her grilling on your cases, and like they pull them apart, absolutely pull them apart and quiz you on it. And then the second 45 minutes is all about, code of practice, standards of practice. They also have to know the legislation, so the legislative acts to do with that. So it was a hell of a lot of study, and oh my goodness, I think I know the UK, well, you come out of that knowing the UK law around chiropractic better than probably the chiropractors that graduate from the UK.
That's brilliant.
Yeah. It was nuts.
Yeah.
So with that interview, you either pass, you conditionally pass, or you fail. So I conditionally passed, which means I had to do a whole heap of extra work, prove that I'd done that to the standard that they liked, and then I could get registered.
Nice.
So I sat there, yeah.
And just so everyone listening understands, conditionally passing, apparently, I mean, from what I've heard from the people that I've talked to who've come from New Zealand to go over there and do that, all of them have come up with a conditional pass. Just because we're taught in such a different way. We're taught vitalistically, and over there they question you in such a different way that it's almost impossible to get through unless you've obviously had the chance to talk with someone like yourself.
Yeah, so I think one person who sat them recently passed outright. But I think that's, talking to others that have done it.
Yeah.
So I approached the interview thinking that being confident in what I talk about and who I am as a chiropractor was just as important as, talking about the biomechanical sort of stuff. So I chose to use, also using my notes from school, subluxation was all over them. There was no getting around that.
Yeah.
So I actually chose to use subluxation when I was talking to them.
Go you.
And you have to send in a glossary of terms. So I defined what I meant by subluxation, and I based that on Heidi Harvick's, subluxation model.
Nice.
The kicker in the teeth was that one of the extra things I had to do was a 2,000-word essay on evidence-based practice. Because apparently basing your care on things like Heidi's research wasn't what the GCC was looking for.
Wow.
Bit of an ouch.
Yeah.
Yeah. Also, I felt that I can confidently talk about subluxation, what I'm feeling when I find it, how to correct it, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
But if I change my language to talk about, biomechanical lesion or something like that, one of those words that just makes your insides contract a bit.
Yeah.
If they question me on that, I would unravel very, very quickly. So
Sure.
There was a bit of a pride being in there, definitely. But also, I think a little bit of common sense is to coming across as confident. Sure.
Yeah. But I guess that is one of the difficulties when you do come from a school who is, who really indoctrinates. Thank you. Indoctrinates you into that style of thinking and that style of communicating with people, where you talk about how the body can heal itself, and all you are is just, releasing this subluxation valve, or however analogy you want to use it, where you're kind of unleashing the innate potential of the human body. And you go over to the UK who say, no, you're treating this musculoskeletal lesion, right? Mm-hmm. That must be a really, really big transition.
And if they're coming with lower back pain, you're just treating the lower back.
Yeah, and that's it.
Yeah.
That must be hard, because over in the UK, there's plenty of vitalistic chiros over there. It's not like they all practice that way.
It's crazy, and that was one of the big draw cards to the UK, was just the sheer amount of offers. I mean, I graduated, December 2014 when we finished. Within 2 months, I had something like 15 job offers.
That's incredible.
Like, it was crazy, and a lot of them, when I went for Skype interviews with them and that sort of thing, they said, you know the philosophy, you talk the philosophy, you know how it all works, you have that mindset, you have that vocabulary, you can communicate with patients on that way because that's what you've been taught. We don't have to spend thousands of pounds on sending you to seminars or training programs to get you to talk that way. So you're already, miles ahead of a lot of other people. And that was a little bit of a, thanks, Phil.
Yeah, it's a nice boost. Yeah.
So that was actually really, really nice to hear. So, I mean, it's just jumping through the hoops, talking in that biomechanical model.
Sure.
To get to, a lot of chiropractors that really do want people like NZ graduates.
So what would you say, I mean, if you were to do it again, would there be resources that you're aware of now that you weren't aware of at the time that would really help you kind of get through that interview process? Because that's the biggest hurdle for you, right?
Oh, yeah. That was one of them.
Okay.
The next one was visas. But
actually, I was just about to ask for that. But.
Yeah. I probably would have really gone over and perhaps done extra study on rehab and extremities, because they love that sort of stuff over here, soft tissue work, really getting to grips with that aspect of stuff as well. I think that definitely would have helped. To be honest, there's not too much that I would have done different. I would do differently. I think I would still stick to my guns a bit about subluxation, but perhaps I probably would go in with a bit more research, so you can really blast them. Was like, well, this is the research that blah 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 blah.
Nice.
Yeah, I'd probably make sure that I have a rationale for absolutely everything and have a rationale for that rationale. Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because like you said, that part of the interview process is to kind of drill you down and really, really see what drives you and what your core attitudes are. Because if they don't align with the GCC, which is the General Chiropractic Council of UK, right?
Yes.
Yeah, if they don't align with them, then they're not going to board register you.
Yeah. And I mean, I think it's chiropractic everywhere is just getting a bit of a hounding, but
sure.
Yeah, you would think that something like the GCC or even the CCEA, they really just want to make sure that you're safe, that you're competent in what you do. My experience of the whole GCC thing and talking to others is that there's a lot of room for subjectiveness in the interview process, and I know that there's a big push from some of the associations over here to change that, which is good.
Nice. Cool.
Yep.
That's really good. And then just in terms of resources, like obviously the first part is all case-based, which you just have to know your stuff through and through, and then also obviously change it a little bit so you're using the type of words that they want to hear. But then, so you're jumping through the hoops. But the other side of that, the next 45 minutes is all board legal requirements, that kind of stuff. Where did you find out about that information? One of my classmates was going to be working for somebody who was on the executive of one of the associations over here, and he helped us out a lot. Because we were just going to read over the standards of practice and codes of practice here,
but he said, no, you need to know the acts around this. So, which is their legislation, essentially. So there was like the Children's Act, the Health and Safety Act, the Mental Health Act, just so much other sort of stuff. And actually reading through those, I mean, some of those are 200 pages.
Whoa.
Yeah, and it's all lawyer speak. So you read a sentence and you're like, I have no idea what they said.
Yeah. Oh, man.
I mean, there is some common sense to it. Like, there are some sections in that act that don't apply to chiropractors. But just reading those and obviously making notes on how those acts apply to, chiropractic and how you practice as a chiropractor and how the practice runs and all that sort of stuff. I think there's been some people in the past that have looked at some of the other health modalities such as nursing or physio that have abbreviated versions of the acts on their website, and not going to cut it, guys, sorry.
Damn, no shortcuts.
Yeah, because they and depending on who you get as a panel, because it's a panel of three chiropractors or chiropractic academics, they might ask you very broad general questions, or they might ask you nitty-gritty, detail-orientated questions, which was the panel that I got. So it's best to prepare for both.
Yeah, definitely. So you've paid your money, you've set the board exams, or you're about to. You've studied your ass off. How do you actually get a visa so you can work there?
Oh, this was the fun bit.
Yeah.
So because I'm too old and too Australian, so
Bugger.
over 30 and no UK ancestry, because I think you can get a UK passport if your parents or your grandparents were from the UK or have a UK passport. So I had to get a work visa. It's called a Tier 2 at the moment. And that process took 5 months.
Wow.
And the way the process works is they have a set number of visas that they issue per year. And then they divide that into monthly. So they make month by month decisions. And it's a point-based system. So if you're in what they call a skilled shortage, which unfortunately chiropractic's not, in my opinion it should be.
I was just about to say, I'm pretty sure it is, but I guess not recognised as one.
Not recognised, because there are some chiropractors that I spoke to, nearly 2 years ago that are still looking.
Wow.
Yeah, insane. I think you get like 70 points or 75 points. If you're doing a PhD, you get 55 points. Everybody else gets 20
Okay.
or 30, something like that. And then you get points added onto that according to what you're getting paid. The trouble with the point system is that the number of points you need to get a visa for that month changes every month.
Oh, man.
So some months it was 22, some months it was 55.
Wow.
So there was no guarantee that you're going to get it. And the whole process took 5 months, because not only do I have to get a visa, but my employer had to get a license to employ me.
Oh, wow.
And, that's a whole process. And then he has to apply again. Once he's got that license, he has to apply for what they call a certificate of sponsorship, which essentially is the visa to employ me. So a lot of money and a lot of time, and it got extremely frustrating month by month. I would miss out by 1 or 2 points. It was really, really hard.
They were doing really hard, because you were over in the UK at that time, weren't you?
No, I was in Australia, because you have to apply for the visa outside of the UK.
Right. But you'd set your board exams by then?
Yeah, I sat the board exams. I came back to Australia because my little brother got married.
Oh, yeah, that's a good reason.
Yeah. So the plan was because I had to do that extra work as well. So I came back, did the extra work, which took me 3 months to finish. And then, had to go through all that. Well, we were going through the visa process while I was finishing off that work, but boy.
Nice.
Yeah.
Would have been tough. And I guess that's kind of like that final hurrah, because you'd finished board exams in New Zealand, you'd graduated ready to go, and then there's this next final boss that you have to defeat.
And this next. Yep.
Oh, man. But
yeah, it was.
Obviously, there's a happy ending to the story, though.
I finally got here.
Yeah.
January. I moved over end of January this year, so it's been what 9 months.
Yeah.
Yeah, my
Nice.
maths is not great.
It's fun. It's around about that. And what's the experience been like? I mean, after all of that kind of anticipation and work and hard work and money and study and restudy to get over there, and now to finally kind of be settling in, how does that feel?
Oh, it was great.
Yeah.
Absolutely great. Also, Edinburgh is a beautiful city as well. So not only was there the excitement of I can finally start work, but there was also, I'm in freaking Edinburgh.
Yeah.
Excitement too. So the cool thing about the practice that I'm in is that he sees it more as a partnership as opposed to a boss-employee kind of thing.
Perfect.
And it's really good because they appreciate the fact that I, was a CA in a few practices before, and now I'm a chiropractor. So I've kind of got both systems that they're we're slowly integrating a few changes into the practice, which is good.
Nice.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's been really good. It was definitely worth it. I mean, nothing is ever easy.
No.
But yeah, it hasn't been easy. It's been effortless, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. It's hard, but it's worth it. You feel motivated to do it, so it's good.
Yeah, definitely. And there's been times where, of course, it's been tough. That's just how it is. But I don't know. It always seems to work out. So
certainly. Yeah. Well, when you're on the right path, it always does work out in the end.
Well, it sure does.
So it's story time. Been practicing in the UK for the last 9 and a bit months. What's your favourite patient story? A really, really kind of good time that made your heart sing, and then what's something bad that happened, but the lesson that you learned from it?
Oh, okay, this one makes me really emotional. Actually, it's probably about 3 or 4 months in, and this lady came to me. She would have been late 20s. She was late 20s. Yep. And she had cystic fibrosis, but she came to me with neck pain and headaches and some lower back pain. And talking to her, it became apparent that the neck pain, back pain and headaches really weren't an issue. Her breathing was starting to seize up, and she's had all the tests under the sun. Obviously, she was under medical supervision with the cystic fibrosis, but they couldn't figure out why. The only thing that they were doing was upping her medication, which wasn't working. So she was getting really quite upset about that. And I assessed her, and one of the ways that we assess people in the practice, it's a little bit different to how we're taught at NZ. It's a little bit of the functional neurology stuff, so working with a sway pattern, and then finding particular points on the side that they sway to that may change things. And some little voice inside me said, she had a sway pattern to the left, go upper cervical on the left. and she was lying down, and I just dug into that spot, and she started crying, and I was thinking, oh goodness, I've hurt her. And I'm like, are you okay? And she's like, oh my God, I can breathe. And so, yeah, I cried a little bit.
I bet.
She's in tears and just absolutely blown away by that. I get goosebumps talking about it too. So that was a huge, huge learning curve for me. Unfortunately, she dropped out of care. Stuff happened, life, family stuff. So
sure, that's the way. Well, I kind of see that sometimes. It obviously was a moment in time when she needed you, and then other stuff's cropped up.
And I like to think that, you know, she saw me for a couple of months actually.
Great.
And, you know, got some really cool changes and all that sort of thing. So I like to think, you know, if people get those cool changes and they drop out of care, something's going to happen one day where they're going to think, oh, I know where to go to help me with this. Exactly. And they're back in your door.
Exactly.
So,
and I never really think it's a no. It's just a not right now, right?
Yeah, agree.
Yeah.
Agree.
Oh, what a wonderful story.
Yeah, it was really, really nice.
Yeah.
Really nice. And then the bad one. Let me see. Okay, so I had a guy in who had a history of cervical disc herniations, I think C5, C6, C6, C7. He'd had surgery, it had worked for a little bit, and then he kind of relapsed. And his very first visit, really nice guy, and so we adjusted him, all that sort of stuff. I manually adjusted his upper cervical. I avoided the lower down stuff, obviously.
Sure.
And he felt really dizzy after it, which is kind of normal, especially if they've been jammed up for a while. Like,
yeah.
I've also might have fried his nervous system a little bit. And then,
yeah.
And then I get a call, the CA, he came in at the end of the shift saying, about half an hour afterwards, this guy had called saying that he had been really dizzy on the way home. He got home, vomited everywhere, somehow made it in the house, and just literally could not move. And the dizzy, the nausea, feeling really faint, all this sort of stuff. And the alarm bells were going off in my head going, oh my God, this guy's having a stroke.
That's what you start to panic about. Worst case scenario. Oh my God.
I was like, oh my God. Like,
yeah.
Full on freak out mode.
Sure. See, when you tell me that story,
fantastic.
Oh, I bet he would have been, because that's something that can happen. I mean, for me, I'm like, obviously his nervous system is finally rejecting the shitty environment that he's been living in, trying to throw up all the crappy food that he's been eating on that day, and telling him he needs a good sleep. so that's what that story tells me. But please go on.
And because we give a verbal informed consent, so, you know, I gave him the thing, you know, chance of stroke is 1 in 5.85 million, and most people are sort of like, oh, is that all fine?
Yeah.
And he was too. So, I mean, he knew about all that stuff. So I called him back and was just asking him, like, how's your speech? Because he had said that, you know, his speech had gone a little bit funny too. How's your speech now? You know, are you feeling any weakness? Blah, blah. And he ended up, he's like, no, I've stopped vomiting. I'm not dizzy. I'm fine. I'm just lying on the couch because I'm just really, really tired. And again, I just questioned him about 3 times, you know, the signs of stroke.
Sure.
And, you know, most of them he said no to. But oh my goodness, I did not sleep that night.
No, I bet you didn't. Just freaking out.
I went home, had a bath and 2 glasses of whiskey.
Yeah. Knock yourself out.
Yeah, so I mean,
Funny.
it ended up being okay. You know, he came back. I called him the next day just to check in.
Nice.
I always like to call my new patients the day after anyway. I think it's a nice touch too. But also, you know, that first 24 hours can be when things can be a bit unsettled, and if they're not sure, you know, that's when they don't come back.
Exactly.
But he was fine. He walked in the next day and he literally bounced in and said, "I feel amazing." And I'm like, "Oh, thank God."
But you would have had that panicky moment before. But
It was in that moment thinking, did I miss something in the exam? And did I miss something like a stroke? And yeah, freaked out. So there were a couple of lessons in there for me. I definitely reread the signs of stroke and all that sort of stuff too.
I bet.
But also the lesson for me in that was essentially, you know, good old principle number 6, everything takes time in a way, was you cleared out the subluxations, you freed up the nervous system, everybody's going to respond differently, and this guy just had a really quick detox, essentially, for want of a better word. I think the system.
I think that's a very accurate way of describing it.
Having faith that what you did has helped them on some level, was a learning curve for me.
Oh, that's awesome.
So now people come in with crazy shit, and you're just like, oh, okay, you know, I might just modify what I do, but I'm still going to adjust you.
Hell yeah. That's awesome.
So
I like how your good and slightly negative examples are both kind of awesome patient stories. Like both of them had incredible responses, which is kind of what you want in practice, right?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I was just trying to think of a really negative one, and like that was, you know, in that moment quite negative for me, I guess.
Yeah. Well, just scary.
Out the other end, it was fine.
Yeah, exactly. Well, he came back the next day and obviously had a great response, and like you said, just needed a detox. Yeah. And the woman before that was obviously, you know, in for a bit of a journey and a transition, and probably got a large amount of her life back.
I like to think so. Yeah, I think she did. So hopefully she comes back.
Yeah, exactly.
Just to see how she's been.
Yeah, when she's ready. How wonderful. So what does the future hold for you, Ali? What's the next step in the journey?
Well, I'm definitely staying in Edinburgh because I just bought a flat.
Well done, settled down.
I know. Well, paying a mortgage here is a hell of a lot cheaper than renting. So, and Edinburgh prices are nowhere near as insane as Melbourne or Auckland or London. Yeah. So it's still affordable at the moment. I think obviously just keep going where I am at the moment. I mean, my visa's for 3 years and I like the practice. Of course, there's always things that we're going to change, but, you know, at the end of the day, as an associate, you have to remember that it's not your practice. It's, you know, somebody else's dream. Yeah. Someone else's practice. So, you know, you do have to mold yourself a little bit. There might be some things where you're like, oh, you know, I would do it a little bit differently, but at the end of the day, it's their practice. And sometimes I think associates, we get a little bit arrogant and a little bit carried away with that, you know, I want to do it this way, rah, 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 rah. I'm just going on a complete tangent there, sorry.
No, I think that's a really, really, really good point. Because there's definitely times this year that I've had the same thing. And I guess it's because you recently graduated and you've got this fire and passion about how chiropractic should be produced and how it should be done. Yeah. But you're right, you know, I think that's a really, really good point. You are actually in someone else's dream and you're supporting them on that, and you're also getting something out of it, obviously, because it's, you know, a place to support you as you grow and develop your own skills. But absolutely. And like you said, if you can get into a situation like with your primary, how you work together, so it's more of a partnership rather than a kind of boss employee, I think that definitely makes things a lot easier, because you can have those kind of discussions and talk about, well, how can we make the practice better itself rather than do it my way.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm extremely lucky that he's very, very open to that as well. So
it's because you're both Australian, eh?
Absolutely.
Bloody oath, mate.
The funny thing is our receptionist is Australian too, so everybody
Really?
walks in and they're like, what's going on here?
That's hilarious. You're like a takeover.
Yeah, we're infiltrating.
That's brilliant.
Claiming back the land that our convict ancestors had to give up.
Exactly.
Yeah.
A full turnaround. With the Chirosation, this is a conversation that I wanted to have for a really long time, because I think it's really important for people like yourself being involved in the WCCS to go, oh well, yeah, there is other options for me. I can go abroad and I can do chiropractic elsewhere.
Yeah.
And I think it's cool for people to actually hear that and hear the stories of someone who's done it, and had the ups and downs that come along with it, because of course it's a massive transition.
Yeah. And the other good thing about the whole WCCS thing as well is that when I moved to Edinburgh, I had a friend in Edinburgh who was also a chiropractor.
Nice.
So just having one person that I knew has helped immensely, and
Definitely.
also another chiropractor too. So you're there to support each other. You can talk about what's going on in practice without talking to your bosses, so you can let loose and just exchange stories. So that's been really great.
Just having a little bit of a support network going on.
Yeah, no, it's the whole experience. It's been great. So
and exciting
I would
times
do
ahead.
it all again.
Exactly. No, that's amazing, Ali. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing today. There are a lot of lessons learnt there.
Yeah, there's been a hell of a lot of lessons and a lot of introspection, and I think getting out of your head and into your heart and your hands is the best place you can be, and trust that little voice that sometimes tells you, oh, go here, or no, don't go there, but do this.
Yeah.
I think as you practice more, because technically this is my first year of practice, because last year was such a schmozzle. I think just learning to trust that is huge. Definitely.
And if anyone listening's wanting to reach out to you, get some advice or get in contact, what's the best way for them to do that?
I'm always on Facebook. So find me at Facebook. It's Ali Schwarz, or email alisonschwarz@gmail.com.
That's perfect.
And happy to help. So
yeah. Well, definitely. I mean, you were super easy. I mean, the last time we had a chat was a couple of years ago when you transferred me some patients at the Chiro College. So you were super receptive to me, completely out of the blue, being like, "Hey, Ali, you want to have a conversation about stuff?" So it was great. It's great, and I'll put your contact details in the show notes as well, so people can easily find them and get in touch if they need.
Cool.
That is brilliant, Ali. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
At the side.
Thank you for all the support you've been showing this platform. If you have any ideas for future episodes or you'd like to be involved, send me a message through the website or your preferred social media. For the resources mentioned in this episode, check out the show notes or thechirosation.com. If you enjoyed this episode, share it with a friend and leave a comment on Facebook. Now go out there and start a Chirosation today.